Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Meta Cafe. Grab your cup of coffee or tea, sit back, relax, and let's chat about the astrology, human design, and the Pleiadian Earth energy of the day. And today I'm already hearing there seem to be a couple of issues showing up for people, and it's really kind of interesting to watch when this phone starts going crazy with text messages, emails, and what's that other thing I get? Instagram messages. At 6 a.m. when I get up, I know that it's going to be a bit of a crazy day. And I think there's a lot of emotional energy out there that's being triggered right now for some of you. And I'm wondering how everybody seems to be feeling today that's here with me this morning. So I'm going to ask you guys to just check in, say, hey, I'm great, or hey, I'm, having a problem, because I think that there's one word that I can kind of sum up, and it is inadequacy. I think there are a lot of you out there today feeling maybe triggered by an event yesterday, of inadequacy. And it makes perfect sense to me that I would have experienced that sort of the day before. I experienced it actually sort of yesterday morning, in response to the email I told you about that I got. And I usually do feel things a little bit ahead of everybody. So I know, I should have known yesterday that this was going to pop up in people's fields today. And if it does, you know what? It is an emotional trigger. Today, the moon is in Aries. And if you remember when I showed you the astrology chart of how angles the Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, and Libra energies are all working together with planets but anchoring in Cancer and in Capricorn, anytime the moon then moves through Aries or Libra, we have triggers to those planets in Cancer and Capricorn, squaring them. And that is a challenge, right? It makes things more difficult for us, not to harm us or hurt us, but to shake us to our cores a little bit, to wake us up to what it is that is standing in the way of you being your whole, healed, vital self. So for those of you out there this morning who may be feeling a little emotional or a little triggered by things, rest assured this too shall pass. I'm hearing from people, another person today whose car, totally only 2 years old, just died. Like it's toast, she said. It's just toast. And I was like, oh dear, Mercury preparing for retrograde, triggering these things, having us kind of look back a little bit, like what step did I miss, or what haven't I worked on that's been blaring at me, that I'm being given the time to deal with. Mimi says, overall, I'm doing well. I can see where folks are being triggered from a number of directions. Just a quick glance through Facebook tells the temperament, or shows the temperament of the energies. You're exactly right, Mimi. And this morning, now I don't know if I dreamed this. I'll check the news feed later, but I got a text message from someone last night asking me about Robert Mueller's testimony in Congress on the 18th of July. And I was like, what? I don't know anything about this, but it turns out, if I'm not dreaming this, he actually is testifying before the House Judiciary Committee on the 17th of July, which is the day after the lunar eclipse from hell, from HEWQ, right? It is a lunar eclipse in July that is squaring Aries, both the moon and the sun. And Aries, as you know, the goddess of strife, the goddess of discord, and she is creating double trouble. And for whom? That remains to be seen, right? Is this something that ends up, who knows how this is going to end up? But if that was not a dream that I had, if that is really true, then it is a very interesting thing for us to keep an eye on as the transits build through the month of July, through eclipses, Mercury retrograde, and then a second new moon in that month to make things just more interesting. So let's see people's comments here. Debbie Tibbetts Tumiel, good morning, sweetie. She says, people lashing out around me, and I'm like, WTH. Okay, I've already seen the WTF this morning by another client, so I totally get where that's coming from. Suzanne saying, oh, wow, just had this conversation with my daughter last night. Interesting, isn't it? Debbie Hedden, hi, everyone. Glad to make it today. We're glad to see you too, Debbie. And Suzanne Fulmer, I'm always glad to see you out there. And Patricia Woods, good morning. And Vanita, good morning. I hope everybody's really doing well. But again, just to go backwards in time here a little bit from what I said earlier, if I want to know what you're experiencing today, because I'm just kind of curious now, what is moving through the collective today? Mimi says, Mueller on the 17th, yes, setting an intent for the truth to shine through, duty to truth. Well, there's something to be said about that, Mimi. Yeah, that particular day, the 17th, I not to go into, July right here, but that particular day, the moon is in an opposition to the planet Mercury, which is in retrograde during that time. So it ought to be interesting, right? It ought to be interesting as things will be coming. It'll be in the later degrees of, oh no, it won't have crossed over into Cancer again yet, but it still should be some drama. I'm guaranteeing drama around the testimony, whether it is drama being directed at him from outside or whether it's drama created within the testimony itself or drama within, the houses of Congress. I don't know, but I would expect drama. And, it's an interesting sideline for us personally to sit back and kind of watch what's happening. But please don't let these things that are happening in the outer world trigger you. You've got enough on your plates, right? You've got enough of personal things that you're moving through. Your inner world is just an outpicturing of what's going on in the outer world. So if you're turbulent inside and you see a turbulent outer world, this is what it is that we are meant to be working through, right? We're creating a pathway for peace and a pathway for meeting at a different kind of energy instead of all of the polarization that's been happening. Now, are we going to get there on July 17th with that testimony? No, not likely. If anything, I think that deepens the division. And at least in the short term, it's almost like the surgeon being able to go in and open up a wound, let it heal, draining the swamp, if you will, and then healing it back or, stitching it back up and letting it heal. So we've got a lot going on in that outer world. Try not to get caught up in it, but I watch it with interest. The problem for us is when we watch these things, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, and I'm speaking specifically here for the USA, but in your own countries, if you're watching me from a different country or from Europe or something like that, watch how this is playing out in your own world as well, in your own government. It's about us healing that breach within us, right? So the more we can become the observers, the more it leads us to the healing that we personally need. If we get into the drama and the trauma of everything that we're seeing, which is what we almost always do, right? We get it, we see that playing out there, and then it evokes a response within us that sometimes isn't responding, but it's more like reactionary, and we lash back out. And that isn't the way that we need to go here. Right? The way we need to go here is through healing and valuing everyone and everyone's ideas and move forward from there. And that's a tough one to hoe right now. I get it. I totally do. But so if we can watch the drama without getting into the drama, so much the better. Okay, Linda, good morning. She says, thank you for chart. Could not connect with presentation. Also had a call from attorney to deal with problems. Wow. Okay, well, hopefully that gets solutions for you, Linda. I still have, I think, your regular astrology chart getting ready to be sent to you today, your natal astrology chart. Kathy, good morning to you. We have a terrible problem with homeless tweakers here, and the police are moving them out tomorrow. Lots of fights and thefts. This is so McMinnville. She lives in McMinnville, Oregon. Hard not to feel personally attacked. It is difficult, right? I'm not saying that any of this is easy. I'm really not. None of this is easy. If it were easy, it wouldn't be drama. If it were easy, it wouldn't be traumatic. If it were easy, it wouldn't make the freaking evening news, right? So it's not easy, but it's a must. It's a must. We must go through this. Now, today is particularly emotional as the moon in Aries is squaring our little friends in Capricorn, Saturn and Pluto and the South Node. And remember, that trio in Capricorn is responsible for the crashing of things, for the demolishing or the destruction, in order to be able to reconstruct, to rebuild, and to refashion whatever it is that it's crashing, right? So when the moon is in Aries, it's a trigger. Aries is a sign ruled by the planet Mars, and Mars is a trigger. It's a planet that we call a catalyst, right? When Mars and the moon is also a catalyst. So we have two planets, the feminine catalyst and the more masculine catalyst, and they create tension. They create action. They create movement. And in the right timing, if it's the moon and Mars, just because he's a warrior kind of archetype. And so we have destruction and the ability to reconstruct from there. So this is happening in various ways, shapes, and forms in our lives personally, right? So what is it that's shaken up in your life? And maybe it's time to release your attachment to that, and then be able to see or hold space for what comes next. What more is possible, right? What more, what's coming into, can't speak this morning, apparently. What more is possible and what better things may come. So there, finally said it. So if we can hold that space, and if we can remember that in the heat of the moment, then even though it doesn't mean that what's happening isn't emotional, it doesn't mean that you have an emotional reaction to it. It just means that you realize that this too shall pass. And whatever it is that's going on around you has the ability to catalyze something, shake up something, and then let you move forward. So there you go. Debbie Tibbetts, Tumiel, I have a feeling July is going to be a doozy. Oh, definitely a doozy. Definitely a doozy. You were on the webinar last night, Debbie, so you heard what we were talking about. And it's going to be a doozy. And the important thing then is that you know about it going into the month, so you can work with it as it starts to pop up. As soon as I saw that text message from somebody about the Mueller testimony, I went, "Ooh, isn't that interesting?" On the day after a lunar eclipse. A lunar eclipse that is engaged with the planet Aries. So, which, there's something really interesting. I think I've spoken to this before here in the morning. There's something really interesting going on. It was around 2005, I guess it was. There were several planets discovered around that time. And, in 2006, it was the discovery of these new planets or these new bodies that created the shakeup with the International Astronomical Union and changing Pluto's status from planet down to dwarf planet. Because some of these astrological or astronomical bodies they were discovering were bigger than Pluto. So if Pluto is a planet and these new bodies that they were discovering were bigger, then ought not they be a planet as well? Well, of course, you know how that's greeted by the scientific community that has a tendency to dig into their dogma and hold tight to their old beliefs. And so they had to write a new story. Remember those words, write a new story, because that's going to come up here this morning in a little bit. So they wrote a new story, and in their new story, Pluto was demoted to a dwarf planet from planet, and these new bodies then had a classification that could be called dwarf planets, as if that made them less important, right? And most of the planets that they were discovering were being named for goddesses. And in fact, I can't even think of one right now that was not named for a goddess, but there could be. So I'm not worried too much about that. But the ones that we are really excited to deal with are, of course, the ones named for goddesses. And we had Aries popped into our field, Ceres popped into our field, both of them named after very powerful goddesses in the pantheon of goddesses. And then Pallas Athena and Juno, Vesta, all of those, which we knew as asteroids, now sort of creeping into that idea of being dwarf planets. And as well, planets like Sedna, which dwarf planet status, Sedna, a very difficult feminine archetype. And so interestingly enough, as these things pop up and we begin to apply that archetype to our world, we see what's taking shape. It is the shaking up of the patriarchy. It is ultimately, right? This is the ultimate destruction in the making of the patriarchy, not to destroy it completely, but to underpin it, to undermine it, so that it can allow for the divine feminine, the more matriarchal energies to at least come up and greet that patriarchal energy, to at least balance them. But like all big changes, evolutionary changes, it doesn't come with peace and easiness, at least not in our world thus far, right? With these big changes come with conflict and with fighting and with struggle. And that struggle leads us to the new, right? To a new paradigm. And struggle is a part of your human design. It is a part of the evolutionary process. You came to planet Earth knowing that struggle was a part of the experience here. What is optional, though, is suffering through these things. And we tend to wear our suffering like badges of honor or like crosses on our back, right? Carrying the cross of Christ through our lives, and victim stance. That is what we're also letting go of, and crashing around is that victim energy. So these are big themes. These are big things that are changing. Is it any wonder then we as individuals end up in a reaction to those big things that are changing? We can't help it. We are emotional beings. We have emotions. We also have a mind. We have intelligence and intellect. We know that something's not right. And we know that there's this handwriting on the wall when we see something going on in our outer world. And that begins to trigger our emotional responses to these things before anything's ever touched us personally. So it's an interesting thing for us to watch. We have to become the observers. I do believe that one of our cards that we got recently was about being the observer, being the observer. So, of course, that's a difficult thing to do, right? I don't want you to stay being the observer doesn't mean that you don't take action in the world when you see something happening. So if you were being the observer and you walk down the street and you observe people kicking a homeless person or taking a homeless person's belongings, which are meager at best, are you really just going to stay in observer mode and not lend a helping hand? Right? That's not our human nature either. Our human nature is we want to help. We want to, get involved with something like that. So I'm not saying don't get involved. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying watch and learn, observe, and then choose when you're going to take action. You choose your action. You don't react. Okay. At least that's what I keep telling myself, right? Every time something triggers me, I was triggered yesterday morning. I shared that with you guys, and then I stayed out of that reaction as quickly as I got triggered. I recognized it, and I didn't gut check react. I waited, and I waited, and then something wonderful happened later in the day yesterday, totally counteracting what had happened earlier. It's amazing, right? It's almost a miracle. Miracles happen in the space that we allow them to happen. So allow the space for miracles to happen, and they will. So don't be surprised if you have that emotional knee jerk today, that feeling that wants to come up. Feel the feeling, but you don't have to express that feeling or take action on that feeling, right? Okay. Void of course moon coming, 3:52 a.m. for you all on the East Coast. That would be just after midnight 52 for us here on the West Coast, all the way until 9:33 a.m. tomorrow morning for you all on the East Coast. So I don't mind a void of course moon when it happens overnight, right? We're not doing anything anyway, unless you are a night worker. This is not much, for us. We can sleep through it. We can have good dreams maybe, but tomorrow morning after 9:30 a.m. for you on the East Coast and 6:30 in the morning for us on the West Coast, the moon will be out of Aries and into Taurus, and this emotional reaction might be able to pass if it weren't for the fact that the moon immediately runs into the planet Uranus. So maybe expect the unexpected, but the unexpected could be good things too, right? Good things could be happening. So today's heavier energy or more emotional energy gives way tomorrow to more Taurus energy. So That's what I say about this too shall pass. The moon moves quickly. Now, that doesn't mean the other planets move as quickly, but the moon is shaping our emotions and our soul reaction to these things. So that's why we look at the moon. All right, today, any questions, people? No new comments here. Debbie says, staying home. Stay home. Although if that's what you want to do, stay home. Otherwise, go out. Just, use what I'm saying as practice. Practice what you preach. And, don't beat yourself up when you fail miserably at it, right? Yesterday, I almost had a fail moment. I almost had an epic fail. And had I failed, I would have been very tempted to beat myself up over it, because I'm just like you guys, right? I don't have any market on higher consciousness here. I also react like a human, and I want to beat myself up when things don't go the way I planned them, or if I, fail in some way. But don't, resist getting into that as well. We're all learning on this planet Earth, and part of learning is failing, right? It's the experience that you have, right? Loving that part of yourself that fails, as well as loving that part of yourself that succeeds, and seeing them both as, the same, different sides of the same coin, as it were. So, good morning, Elisa. She says she likes starting her mornings here. I love it that you're starting your mornings here. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you who start your days here with me. I love that. Okay, so let's go into the Pleiadian Earth energy of the day. If anybody has questions or comments, please feel free to do that there in the chat, and I'll see them. Today is a 3 universal day, and the Earth energy of the day is called self-regulating. Interesting. I've been waiting for this day to sort of show up in our field, because in the Mayan calendar, this was the day called Etznab. And I'm not even sure I'm explaining or pronouncing that correctly, but it was represented by the flint knife, or the obsidian knife, not flint, the obsidian knife. And if any of you have ever seen obsidian, it's a glass rock. It's volcanic in nature. It's beautiful, black, glassy, very sharp. It's a very sharp cutting material. And the Maya, and I'm guessing the Pleiadians here as well, because they're the ones that gave them the system to the Maya, saw this particular day as the ability to cut away with precision that which is not correct for you. And it is about making the hard choices about who you are and about what stays and what goes, right? It is, where's your competency? Competency is a word that I'm sure that the Maya didn't use in this respect, but we here could look at it that way. What is it that you're trying to be? Who is it that you're trying to be that is not true for you? And whatever that is, cut it out, right? And you can precisely do that. This is surgical precision. The obsidian knife gave them precision over their cut. And 3, the universal energy is that of creating, being able to think in new ways, to be able to create new things. So the 3 energy that we are universally resonant with today is about creating the new, but the self-regulating part, the earth part, says, what do you got to let go in order to do it? Right? If you want to create something new, you may need time or space or materials, energy to be able to do that. So something might have to go. And that's what that obsidian knife is really good for, cutting out what doesn't fit, and leaving the space then for something that does. So it's a great day. I think the people who carry Etznab in their Mayan astrology, I think this has a very scorpionic feeling to it, in that the Scorpios, they get right to the heart of things. Scorpio energy gets right to the heart. Now, that's a Scorpio operating in the higher frequency. In the lower frequency, they do that a little bit passive aggressively, but a Scorpio operating in its beauty and in its perfection is right to the point, gets right to the heart of something. And that's what this energy is today, very much like that, getting right to the heart of something and self-regulating from that point of view, right? Only you can regulate you. Okay. Um, Debbie says, oh, you're so funny, Debbie. I'll cut you. Don't cut other people, cut yourself, but not really with a knife that you're cutting in order to hurt. You're cutting in order to release, right? Releasing. Suzanne says, wow, 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 wow. That's all I can say. Same conversation as last night, just different words coming into focus. I like that, right? I like that. That's validation, that's verification, that's certifying, that's telling the truth, right? That there's this energy that's moving through here like that. Validation, verification, yes. And good morning, Asa. It's great to see you this morning too. So we've been having an interesting conversation here. For those of you who are just joining us, we talked about the emotional tenor of the day, which is pretty volatile, pretty deeply emotional, and also a little bit, I heard two people this morning. One used the word, what was it she said? It wasn't depression, it was deep sadness. And she was crying. Her heart was broken. She felt like her heart was broken, but nothing had happened to break her heart. But she felt like her heart had been broken. And that is the testament to the power of the moon moving through its position today in Aries and triggering those planets that are in Capricorn. We talked about the Earth or the Pleiadian Earth energy today, which is 3 self-regulating, and it being the obsidian knife and the ability that we have to cut away precisely what is no longer working for us, what doesn't fit, what doesn't belong, and to release that and leave room for something that is more appropriate for us to come into the picture. Now, any questions? No. Okay. If you guys have questions, go ahead and write them in there. I want to shift a little bit now to the human design for the day, because we are entering a new human design week today, and it's the first day of that week. So we're in the first line of the energies, and the first line of any of the energies is about investigating, looking deeper, exploring the territory. So we're going to explore the territory of the sun at gate 52 and the earth at gate 58. And then I want to talk about Mercury, Mars, and Pluto as well, and the gates that they are sitting at. So the sun at gate 52. Gate 52 is, I should have drawn up a chart for today. Dang it. I didn't do that. Now I'm not in my room, so I can't even do that. I could print it, but I won't be able to go get it. So let me just show you a human design chart really quickly. This is from earlier in the week. And the gate 52 sits down here on the root center, right? Gate 52. I don't think you can really see that focused. Oh, the camera focused it for a minute. So gate 52 sits on the root center. So there's an impulse here. And because the root in your human design is the center for impulse, for movement, right? It's that that impulse to take action. It's not the action center with the energy. It is a motor in human design, but its energy is impulse, and then it stops. Impulse, and then it stops. This is the center for stress. It is a pressure center as well, the pressure center to do. But the gate 52, it has nothing to do with doing. It has everything to do with being. Because gate 52 in the gene keys is called the gate of stress. In the gift in this gate, it's the gift of restraint. It's about holding yourself in check. It's about self-regulating, right? Self-regulating. In its highest expression, the gate 52 brings us to stillness. I carry this gate in my human design, and the planet Mars sits there for me. You can imagine how that goes when you're feeling the impulse, the stress from the root center to do something, right? For me, it's very hard sometimes not to get into the doing of something, right? If I see something faltering, or I feel like there's something that needs to be done, my immediate response is that I want to do something, even if there isn't really anything I can do. And that's a very difficult energy for us as humans in the Western world, because we've gotten so into doing. But ultimately, this gate teaches us about restraint. Otherwise, we are in the shadow energy of this gate, which is stress. We're feeling stress likely because of the pressure to do something. Any questions about that? Patricia, good morning, hon. She says, speaking of obsidian, this morning I found my obsidian stone that I couldn't find. Isn't that amazing? Synchronicity. There must be something for you about that, right? What is it that you need to cut away? What is it you need to release? What is it? The other thing this might be about, and this is something interesting too, is that black, the color black, and obsidian is a black stone, absorbs all the light, right? That's why it's black. And as white reflects all the light, black absorbs all the light. But obsidian has that glassy texture, that glassy look to it. So you could actually see yourself in it. It's almost a mirror. And in one of the Mayan card decks that I have, there's a card called the Obsidian Mirror. What do you see in that mirror? Which I always find really fascinating. Okay, so on to something else here. So the gate 52 is taking us to restraint and ultimately to stillness, right? Restraining yourself from taking action, self-regulating, making hard choices, right? About what stays, what goes, what's worthwhile, what isn't, what's yours, what isn't, right? And releasing yourself from the stress of the doing of something. Okay. Black also absorbs negativity, right? Right. It does. Londa, good morning. She says, I did, feeling it. I felt the pressure and I did. I needed to set boundaries. Awesome. Good morning, Ashley. It's all right to be late because you can always go back. And then someone new out here, Karen Devine. Lovely to see you. She would love a card when you can. I didn't bring my cards this morning, Karen. No, I don't have them here sitting up at this table with me this morning. I apologize, but maybe tomorrow morning, if you join us, I'll have one here for you. And this is her first time here, so we welcome you. Hopefully you do join us tomorrow or Friday. Often I do card readings as well. Tomorrow's Thursday. Oh my gosh, I have a radio show to be on this afternoon. Ooh, good thing I thought about what the day is, or I might have missed that. 5 p.m. this afternoon, I will be on Blog Talk Radio's Angel Heart Radio with Annette McCoy. We're going to dive deeper into the eclipses. So for those of you listening today, if you want to go to the show, you can dial in and get a mini reading. And when I say mini, Annette keeps me honest here, because otherwise I'll go on and on with people. Here is the phone number. Whoops, that is not what's happening. Here's the phone number if you want to call in for a mini reading. And the show starts at 5 p.m. Pacific time, so 8 p.m. East Coast time, and it's just an hour-long show. If you call in, you can listen through the phone, and then when it's your time, when I start to do readings, then we take you in from the order in which you tuned into the show. So I don't have any choice about that. Annette runs that from behind the scene. So you can do that. That's what I'll be doing today. But make sure, if you're new to me and I've not done a reading for you before, I'll need your birth date, your birth time, and your birthplace in order to get a chart for you. Okay. Colleen, good morning. Been here, but driving. Good morning. I'm so glad that you've been not typing or writing to me while you were driving. That's the safe thing for you to do. So let's go back to the human design energy that's now pulsing through us for this week. The gate 52 is where the sun is, but the earth creates the evolutionary impulse that's going to take us where we need to use the sun's energy of restraint and the sun's energy of stillness. And the earth is actually at the gate of vitality. And that's the gift anyway in it. The highest expression is bliss. In human design, we call the gate 58, also on the root center, the gate of joy. And I always find it interesting because joy and bliss and vitality are not emotions. They are not sitting on the emotional center. They sit on the root center at the gate 58 where the earth is. This is the exact mirror image, by the way, of the Christmas season. Because if we look across, we could look across the zodiac, we could look across time. June, this 26th resonates with right around Christmas time, 25th, 26th. So we're often experiencing the season of joy when the sun is sitting at gate 58. They would be exactly reversed. So here we are then with this energy, the earth challenging us to live in bliss and vitality no matter what is going on around us. Difficult because dissatisfaction is the shadow in this gate, where we might become dissatisfied with the way the world is working, with the way our lives are working out, with the way our relationships are working out. We can be dissatisfied with our finances, with our careers, with our health. And it's easier, it seems, to tap into the dissatisfaction than it is to the bliss, to the joy around us, or to that energy of joy. And literally, because this energy in the root center is foundational, it forms the basis of who we are, right? Who we are is not what's going on up here in our minds. It is who we are based on the interface that we have from the root to the earth. And it's foundational, right? Foundation. Your foundation this week is a challenge to restrain yourself using your vitality in a way that's important and personal and directed in a way that creates joy. That's a mouthful. That's a task well worth it, but also difficult, I would say. Something that we might need to work at and remember in every moment as we move through this week. In fact, that energy is with us from the 26th, I think, all the way to the 30th. Yeah, through the 30th. On July 1st, we start, no, all the way through July 1st. So that's 6 days, long time. Or in human design, that's a long time. And okay. So we get to play with the energy of joy, and that's going to be important when we have these, transits that sometimes make us emotionally react to things that are going on in our world. All right, any questions about your human design? Now, basically, for those of you who are new to human design, this is a human design chart. Hold on, I need to take a drink. I'm talking too much. So as I look at this chart, here is our root center, right? This is the root center down here at the bottom. It all begins here with the impulse at gate 41 to imagine and create. Oops, going this way. I'm not really good in mirror images. So the energy in the root center is about the impulse to move forward. The sacral here is the energy of action and doing. It is actually the energy that is like the Energizer Bunny. It's going and going and going. And so 52 and 58 are both on this center, but they're reaching up to create connection to other planets. They're not in a channel opposite of one another. So they're not completing anything. They're leaving their energy hanging. And it's that hanging energy that is magnetic in attraction to the experience from the opposite side. Now, in your human design chart, you may or may not have anything sitting at gate 52 or gate 58. If it's white, like it is in this chart, here's gate 58, empty, nothing there. Gate 52, empty, nothing there. If your chart looks like that, then this is new energy for you. And this will be something that you're working through, and it will work through you via other people, right? When you're out and about, it'll be your family maybe that triggers you, maybe coworkers, maybe just people out in the world, because it's hanging. It is an electromagnetic attraction, right? It's like taking a magnet and the other end of the magnet, another magnet with the polar opposite comes together and they connect. And that's what happens. Otherwise, it just hangs there. Now, for those of you who have that gate already defined, nothing new happening here for you. Right? For those of you who have the gates at the opposite end. So for those of you who have the gate, it would be the gate 9 on the sacral, or the gate 20 or the gate 18 on the spleen defined. That completes that channel for you. The transit completes that channel. So for the next 6 days, you have access to the channels here, one being the channel of focus and concentration. That would be the 9 to the 52. And the other one, gate 18 to 58, is the gate of judgment. So some of you are going to need to be very careful this coming week, about how you say what you say. And remembering the energy in that channel is nowhere near the throat, right? This is energy that is nowhere near the throat. And so it has to be moved up the chain here in order to be expressed. And the way it is expressed is via an invitation to share your judgment or to share your observations. Does that make sense? Right? So it depends on how your personal chart is set up. If you have questions about that, or if some of you who are new don't have human design charts, you can go to, does everybody have this phone number? If you want to call in for a reading today, that's the phone number. And if some of you need to get human design charts, you're going to go to my website at living-astrology.com. There you go, and request your free chart. There may be some of you out there who would like a chart. Maybe you've lost your chart, but you've already asked for the chart. So email me personally for that so that I don't end up with you doubled on my email list. Okay. So Sun and Earth, I hope everybody understands what that's bringing about for the week. And it'll have various phases that it goes through as it moves through each of the days. Now, let's talk about Mercury and Mars, because both of them, remember I said to pay attention to the words, write a new story. I wanted you to have that phrase in your mind, because Mercury and Mars, now Mercury slowing down, and this is a gate that Mercury will sit at twice, maybe 3 times. It's going to go over this gate, then it's backward over it again, and then it'll go forward over this gate. So the whole concept here is about writing a new story. Mercury communicating a new story. What is that story? And that begins perhaps right now as the planet is slowing down with recognizing what is the story that you're telling? What are you saying about who you are, about what you do, about the status that you're in? And this gives you that opportunity to rewrite that story, right? I want you to rewrite the story. I want you to jot down to yourself, get a piece of paper and go, this is the freaking story I'm telling myself, that I'm not successful, that I'm inadequate, that I create conflict, that everybody around me is stupid, that I'm stupid, that blah, 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 right? You just let it all out. What is that story that you tell? When you're challenged in particular, because on a good day, the story is a different story, or the story recedes to the background. But on a day where you're triggered, all the stories come flooding out, right? All of the stories come out about how you're not successful, about how you don't do anything right, about how people don't like you, about blah, 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 blah. You get the point, right? So I want you to take some time. I want you to get those stories out. That, what is it that you're telling yourself? Because if you remain ignorant of what the story is, you're never going to be able to rewrite it. Correct? Right? It's about the knowing. And this isn't going to feel good. This is not a feel good. This is where I really want you to be the observer, just observing your stories, right? Observing your stories. And then you might observe how it makes you feel when you live that story, or when you talk about that story. How does that feel to you? Does it support you? Does it make you feel good? Does it create joy? Does it create bliss? Because if it doesn't, it's a story whose time has come, and you use that obsidian knife to cut it away, right? You self-regulate here. You make hard choices. The hard choice might be, you know what? I am so done with that story. That's a victim story. I'm done with it. And then the next job you have is to rewrite your story. And you rewrite your story first with thoughts and then with words. When you look in the mirror, what do you say? What are you saying to yourself? When you do something wrong, or when you do something that you perceive as not right or not good, what do you say to yourself? Are you pointing out your flaws? Are you validating that, yeah, you're dumb? Or do you just observe that and go, next time I will change the way that I react. Next time I will change what I do. Next time I will change how I talk to myself. So this is really the direction that we have to go, because words have such power. Thoughts have a lot of power too. And if you connect those thoughts to words, and then they combine with an emotional feeling, you sow the story into your system. You sow that story into your body. You sow that story into your energy field. And who wants that ugly story chasing them around through this lifetime and even into other lifetimes, right? Likely it's part of a story that you've carried from other lifetimes behind you and brought it into this lifetime. So what story are you telling yourself? Suzanne. I love it. She says, stay out of my head, Janet. Oh, that's too funny. It's funny because Suzanne is fairly intuitive. I would almost say prophetic even. And so it's funny that yesterday, everything she was experiencing is what I'm talking about this morning, almost like she just telescoped all that information to me. Or she, drained my head yesterday about what I would be talking about today. So I think it's funny. So, what is that? What is your story? That's the question. And the energy at gate 56, where Mercury and Mars both are, is more than just your personal story, although that's important. It begins with you, but it's about the story of humanity. And do we want the story of humanity to be written with the ugliness of how we treat one another, right? With the ugliness of mental disease that people look at and, shake their head and just roll their eyes at, homeless people that don't have a home, or who are mentally ill or mentally challenged in some way, that divisions between races, between sexes, between political parties, between nationalities. Is that what we want as part of our human story? Right? Some days in the future, 1,000 years from now, do we want to have written in the book of humanity how we took this time and we changed ourselves, right? We changed our orientation, we changed our voices, we changed our hearts and our minds to more loving, inclusive energy? Or do we want the same freaking story of division and polarization and ugliness written 1,000 years from now? Literally, we are on a path of destruction if we stay on that course. And it's not sustainable. That is not sustainable energy. And we have a choice now, and it begins with you personally. And that's why I said, rewrite your story. If you rewrite your personal story, and I rewrite my personal story, and Suzanne rewrites her personal story, and Mimi rewrites hers, or anybody of you out there listening to my voice, rewrite your stories. We all have a bunch of people that we interact with who are then allowed the space to rewrite their stories. Right. That's the beauty of what's happening here with Mercury and Mars. Do I think it's easy? No. No, because I catch myself all the time still in an old story. But now what happens for me, now I'm aware of it and I'm better able to catch it before I really throw all my emotional weight behind that story. And I go, oh yeah, remember you rewrote that story. The story now is this. It's that simple, but you got to start somewhere. And I think you start, if you're not aware of what the stories are that you're telling yourself, you start there. And then you start by taking each one of those stories and saying, now, how could I change this? Because really, if by contrast, what you're saying to yourself, the ugly things you might be saying, or the story that you've got right now about how things are in your life, are really a call for you to look at the fact that you really want the opposite, right? If you're seeing difficult relationships, oops, I locked my cat outside. If you're seeing difficult relationships, what you're really saying is that I want loving, generous, kind relationships. That's what you really want. So write a story about what you want and not about more of what you don't want. You already know what you don't want because it's over here and you're telling the story about what keeps happening in your relationships, or what keeps happening in your finances, or what keeps happening in your job world, or your health, etc. Right? So you know by what you see, that's the story that's not supportive, what it is that you really do want. And you just bloop over to the opposite side. So if your story is about betrayal, let's say you have a story about betrayal and a lack of trust in people, then what you're really saying is that you want to be able to trust, right? That's what you really want. You want to be able to trust. And so you're working on the energy of trust by releasing distrust, right? So, I mean, that's a simplified version of the complete energy, but start there, right? It gives you something, right? You see the ugly story here. And if you really look at that, you know, then what you're looking for is the exact opposite. And the exact opposite is then rewritten as a new story. Okay. Ashley, good morning. She says, it's like my favorite quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. Exactly. That's exactly right. Suzanne, the title of my life from here on out, the best story ever told. I love it. So let's do that for one another, right? Let put that out there. Everybody start writing in, take your ugliest story that you tell about yourself, rewrite it right now in a one line or a two sentence, however long it is, and put that out there. What are you rewriting your story to? What are you now going to be? Okay. While I tell you about Pluto now. Pluto, there was a reason why I wanted to talk about Pluto this morning, and now it's completely lost on me. Well, I'll just tell you about the gate, and maybe it'll come to me why this is important. So Pluto right now is sitting at the gate 61, and the gate 61 is up in the head center. Remember, the head center is about solving, right? The head center here is about ideas and inspirations and solutions to problems. It is also a pressure center. The pressure down in the root is about doing. The pressure up here in the head is about answering questions, the pressure to question. And the question that comes up with the gate 61 is why? Why do I have to do this? Why does this keep happening to me? Why does the sun shine in the east or rise in the east and set in the west? Why? And the question why, although not a bad question, keeps us caught up in this loop of thinking and never allows us to really move from that down into the body. And the real true energy at the gate 61 is about awe and wonderment and magic and mysticism and, looking at things without trying to categorize or put it in a box or detail what it is, right? It is as far away from logic as you can get, really, because it's more in the mystical and the magical. And, it's okay to ask the question, why, but let it be a rumination, right? Let it be something that fills you with the awe and magic of the world and not something that you have to answer, because really, literally, there aren't always any answers to the question, why? And or there's multiple answers, which then force you to keep thinking more and more and more. So Pluto, the great transformer, the planet of power, the planet of transformation, is sitting at the gate 61 and has been for a while, pressuring us to release why and instead embrace, I don't know why, right? I don't know why. It's just magical. It's just mystical. It's just unknowable. It just is. It just is without me having to answer it. It just is. So Pluto at 61 is putting the pressure on us to engage the world at a different level, at a level that is not categorically able to be defined and isn't boxed up or ordered or in any kind of reasonable. It's not with reason. This is with wonder. No reason, but wonder. Okay. I hope that makes sense. Ashley says, what channel does that complete? I have gate 24, so it connects that for me. That is the channel of rationality, of thinking rationally. And, rational, interesting, because to be irrational is to be almost synchronous, what is the word? Synonymous with lunacy, right? Irrational, lunacy. There's a connection there with the moon. And, whoa, I wonder if the moon is at 24 today. No. Oh, wait, wrong day. 26. Ooh, today I should have looked at this too. The moon is at the gate of shock today, and then it moves over to the gate of completion. So interesting combination of energies today. Shock, the gate 51, which is on the identity. It's actually on the ego center right here, and it moves up to the gate 25. This is the gate of, or the channel of initiation. It is the gate of the shaman, right? The shaman, or the gate of the priestess. It is the channel of initiation into a higher way of being, higher knowing, a level up, if you will, in your spiritual connection. But often it begins with a gate of shock. How many times have you had somebody say to you that's had a terrible disease or a terrible health challenge, and they say it was the best thing that ever happened to me? It's because sometimes those kinds of shocks create the space for us to move ahead in our spiritual world. So we have the moon going on there. But to answer your question, Ashley, that completes this channel of rational thinking. And the gate 24, while rational, and in a way seeks the rational answer to the question why, also needs to learn how to be aware that there are times there is no real one answer to the why, that it's as varied as it can be. And our only true quest here as human beings on the planet is the what. What do we want? What do we want to experience? What do we want to do? And that's where we need to focus our energy, not on the whys. The whys are as varied as they can be. So, and you're welcome, hon. All right. So that's about it for me today. It is 5 minutes to 9. I can't believe it because, you guys have seen my papers in the morning, my charts, where they're totally written on. I did not have that much stuff written here this morning. And in fact, I did all that within 15 minutes of me coming on live on air because I was, texting and all that with people who were having issues this morning. So make it a good day and let your triggers guide you into getting to the truth of what you really want, who you really want to be. And then catch that story and then begin the rewriting process of your story. And your story is yours to write. It isn't mine to write for you. It isn't your family's to write for you. Hidden in the stars is your full potential. Hidden in the what do I want helps you get there. I love you too, Suzanne. And I'm so glad you tuned in today. I mean, timing is always elegant. Timing is always perfect for that message. And oh, by the way, timing is something else we could be talking about. Well, maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. So I'm going to make myself a note. Timing tomorrow. All right. So tomorrow we'll talk about that. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Hope to see some of you, or I won't see you, but I'll hear you this afternoon on Angel Heart Radio. In the meantime, have a great day. Bye.